I recently watched a Netflix docuseries titled I Am a Stalker, and it unlocked a memory for me. I once had a stalker, and I'm ready to talk about it. When I was 18, me and my friends liked to go to the mall just to hang out, and I encountered a guy and his friends. I'm gonna call him Ryan. Ryan was really cool and he shot his shot. We exchanged numbers at that point and we decided to hang out pretty quickly. Now, one of the red flags that I feel like I should have paid attention to but just kind of shrugged off was just how affectionate he was at our first hangout. When I picked him up and we got in the car, one of the first things he did was grab my hand and interlocked our hands together. And I found it strange because once again, we didn't know each other, but he immediately started trying to form a connection. What I soon learned was that Ryan was in the foster care system. He told me about how during his junior year, he and his mother were suddenly evicted from their home, being left outside of their house in the cold with all of their belongings. At that time, a court date had been set for them, and they were told that they would be split up. She would be sent to a shelter, and he would be placed temporarily into the system until that court date where they would be reunited. However, during that court date, his mom never showed up, and he remained in the foster care system. Once again, this was his junior year, I believe he said. And when I met him, I was 18 and he was 19. Also during this time, when he was evicted, he had dropped out of school. So when I met him, he was working on his GED. I felt bad for him at that point, and I also naively felt like I could somehow help him through what he was going through. I always found myself trying to help him, like encouraging him to continue at getting his GED. And I even told my family about him. And at one point, my dad considered adopting him, which was so interesting because he knew that that was my boyfriend, but he also heard his story and really wanted to help any way that he could. Thank God he did not. But yeah, we all wanted to find a way to make him feel supported and loved in that moment. Now, during that short time, I saw what seemed like genuine love start to actually feel like obsession. And I'm going to explain the things that occurred in the 3 short months we dated and then beyond that, that really made me feel more and more uncomfortable with him and feel like I was unsafe staying in contact with him. So while we were in our relationship, like I said, it was very short. It was 3 months. He would constantly want to know where I was at and what I was doing. And I think, when you're younger, you have this notion of, oh, I want someone who's obsessed with me. Like, I want them to be all over me. And it sounds cute in theory, but dealing with someone who is like that is extremely overwhelming and is very scary. So not only did he constantly want to know my whereabouts, what I was doing, be on the phone with me or in constant communication, he also had this sort of Jekyll and Hyde nature to him, where when he was angered in any way, he would get enraged and become verbally abusive. And then within a split second, become so sweet and kind. And it was jarring and confusing. And then sometimes he would be angry and say hurtful things and then outright deny that he said it. So that in itself was a very confusing and uncomfortable spot to be in. One of the behaviors that he exhibited that really let me know, okay, I need to pull away, pull back, find a way to get out of this, was he would call constantly. Like if we were to get into a disagreement and I let him know like I need some space, he would call over and over and over and over again. I'm talking over 50 times. I would scroll on my phone and it would just be his number calling over and over and over and over again. And finally, he would get to a point where if I didn't answer the phone, or he felt like, okay, she's not answering the phone, he would move to then leave a message or send a text message saying that if I didn't answer the phone, he would kill himself. And me believing that he would actually do something like that would end up breaking down and just calling him for the sake of not having blood on my hands, so to speak. And that is just such a manipulative and cruel way to get someone to bend to your will. And like I said, that was definitely one of those behaviors that let me know, like, you need to find a way out of this ASAP. And I'm also someone who has always felt like if someone is willing to take their own life, that they probably would be willing to take your life. So I have two more examples before I move into how I knew that this was legit stalking, and I was really fearful of what he could do. So one of the other things that let me know it was time to exit was that he was very manipulative, and he would use his story of him not having any family as a way to once again kind of pull me in and get me to do what he wanted me to do, or show up, be there, be around him. Now, going back to how he and his mom were evicted and he was put into the system, what he found out following him being put into the system after his mom didn't make the court date was that his mom was homeless. Now, I don't know exactly what his relationship was with his father, but from what he had communicated to me, he didn't really have a relationship with his father. His mom was homeless. He did let me know he had a sibling, or maybe even siblings, but they weren't really close or in contact like that. So he would tend to harp on how nobody loved him, everyone always left him, and he didn't want me to leave him. And so at 18, I almost felt a duty to show up and prove that I wouldn't abandon him as he feared everyone else did and would do. Another thing that let me know, like, yeah, it's not, this ain't it, was he had told me the story about how his ex was at that time a basketball player playing in Florida. I don't know if it was Florida State, but she was at a university in Florida and she was playing basketball, and so on and so forth. Cool. Now, one weekend he let me know that his best friend, who happened to be a girl, was in town, and he went and he was really close with her and her family, and he went and he like stayed the night over there, and they were catching up and all the things. And he had asked if I would pick them up and take them to the gym, because they used to like playing like rec ball and stuff like that. And I was like, sure, cool. So got to meet her, she was cool, whatever. And they're playing rec ball, I'm just sitting in the bleachers watching and just hanging out. At some point during this rec ball game, he decides to jog over to me and say, hey, remember the ex-girlfriend that I was telling you about that plays ball in Florida? I was like, yeah. He says, well, that's actually her. He was referring to this best friend of his who he had just stayed the night with. So he basically sat there and admitted to me that he had cheated on me. So yeah, I was like, I'm good on this. I'm out. I left them at the gym and I went home. And this was another moment where he's constantly calling, freaking out. And yeah, I was just like, okay, I need to find a way to once again safely exit this relationship. And I'm about to go to college, so I'm just going to use that as an excuse to end the relationship. So I planned like a picnic date. We were outside just sitting and kind kind of catching up, and I pretty much just let him know, like, as much as I cared about him, our relationship just wouldn't make sense with me going off to college and me being so far away. So I thought it would be best that we just remain friends. He took it pretty hard, but through tears, he let me know that he understood, and that is how I ended that relationship. Once again, all of this took place within 3 months. So it was a lot of highs and a lot of lows in such a little time. And that in itself to me was an indicator that it just was an unhealthy relationship on top of all the other chaos that ensued. Now, following this relationship, the communication did not cease. This is what I mean by I started to see that this was legitimate stalking. He continued to call, continued to communicate. He even would get in contact with friends and ex-friends of mine to keep tabs on me, like reaching out to them to see where I'm at, what I'm doing. I had conversations with him several times to tell him to stop. It even got to a point where I let him know that I was just gonna unfriend him on Facebook at the time. I think that was like the primary platform that we were all using. And I unfriended him, and he still continued to message me. He still continued to try to reach out to me on my phone or through other people. There was even a point in time, and this went on for years, by the way. Remember, I let you guys know that before I went off to college, I ended things with him. By, I believe it was my junior year, he had randomly reached out to me to say that he thought he saw me on campus. And I want to make a note here that I started school at UNC Greensboro. For those of you who are North Carolinians or familiar with colleges in the area, I started at UNC Greensboro. And after my sophomore year, I transferred to North Carolina State University. He reached out to me randomly to say that he was on UNCG's campus and he thought he saw me. When I say my heart dropped, mind you, I had already transferred, but it still freaked me out because my sister ended up going to UNCG. So I know that it was her that he saw and he thought was me. And I also realized that, okay, this isn't just like a social media type of stalking or just like trying to communicate with me on the phone. Like, you've managed to find a way to get to my campus and you saw me, or at least you thought you saw me, and reached out to me to say, hey, I think I just saw you. I'm on your campus. I was shooketh. Yeah, so that was one instance. Another instance where I saw him physically was when I was celebrating my birthday. Once again, this is years after we've stopped dating, stopped communicating, and he still is making attempts to reach out to me, but I'm just, once again, trying to avoid communication or just trying to nicely let him know that I just don't feel like we need to stay in contact. So I was out in downtown Charlotte with my friends for my birthday, and we happened to walk past him. Like, he was coming up the street or up the sidewalk one way. We were coming down the sidewalk in the opposite direction. So we literally crossed paths. As we walked past each other, he notices that it's me. Looking back on it, I'm like, did he already know I was gonna be in the area? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not gonna say that he knew that I was in the area, but coincidentally, we happened to walk past each other. Me and my friends notice it and we're like, oh shit, but we're like, let's just keep walking. We wanted to go get something to eat. We walk into the Hooters. The Hooters was maybe, I'll give it a good 50 plus feet from the place that we passed him. This guy and his friends turned around, came back in the direction that they had walked from, walked into the Hooters, and sat at a table like directly across from the table that me and my friends were sitting in. And he proceeded to sit and stare at me the whole time, to the point where I ended up saying, I don't even want us to order here. Let's just leave. And we left. And then he tried to reach out to me again to say like, oh, it was nice seeing you, or whatever the case may be.
Now, later on in the video, I'm going to get into just tips to stay safe in situations like this. And I just want to highlight here that I don't know if I may have talked about what I was going to be doing for my birthday online. But if you are in a situation like this, or even if you're not in a situation like this, just please do not broadcast what you're doing when you're doing it or in advance, because you never know who will pop up in the area to try to see you or do, God forbid, knows what.
And honestly, I can't even say that's when I started to get scared. I had been scared for quite some time, because I can remember during my sophomore year of college, it had gotten to the point where I started to look under my bed and double check to make sure I had locked not only the front door of my suite, but also my bedroom door every night. Like every night, like clockwork, I would do that, because I feared that he would somehow manage to come on campus and get to my room. So yeah, I was extremely fearful. And because he wanted so badly to like be with me, I just felt like, because once again he had threatened to take his own life, and even at one point he had alluded to like the whole, if I can't have you, nobody else can. I feared for my life for quite a while. Even when he did get into new relationships, he would still reach out and say that basically like he still wanted to be with me and all of those things. And I was just like, you're in a relationship, focus on that. Another way that he was like keeping tabs was constantly creating new social handles. Like on Twitter, I don't know how many Twitter accounts that he created. He would create new user account names, and it was obvious that it was him, because it was just another iteration of his name. Each time I would block the account, and finally I was just like, can you please stop creating these new accounts and following me? And he flat out lied one time and was like, that's not even me, that's my brother. And I'm like, why would he use your name? He's like, oh, he just wanted to know your social media so that he could follow you. And I'm just like, that's so weird, because I've never even met this person in my life. Why would he suddenly just want to follow me on social media? Like, that doesn't make any sense. It was just a culmination of things. And I think one of the last moments where he had reached out to me, I think the last time that I can remember was maybe like around 2018, when he had messaged me and basically told me he was in a financial bind, and I already knew his family situation, and pretty much that he had nobody and he was on the verge of being evicted or losing his apartment, because he and his girlfriend had broken up and he could no longer afford to pay for the apartment, and he had lost his job and he needed to get back on his feet. And his request was if he could move in with me. Mind you, at this point we hadn't talked in years. Like, we don't communicate, we don't communicate. So it was so out of left field that he felt like I was someone that he could ask to live with, given the dynamic of our relationship. Like, it didn't quite make sense to me, but I let him know like, hey, I don't live in the area. I wish I could help, but I wish you all the best. I pray you're able to get back on your feet. And he's like, I can find a way to you, and yeah, I can stay with you and find a job up there. I can get on my feet within like 5 months. And I'm just like, huh? What? Yeah, no. I let him know that that wouldn't work, that wouldn't be possible. But once again, I wished him the best. And to me, when I look at that, it just lets me know that for him, he may have felt like he had a relationship with me that just it wasn't real. Maybe he glamorized or imagined that he and I were something much more than what we actually were. And that's really scary to think about, because when I was watching I Am a Stalker, a lot of the inmates who told their stories were very much so in this state of like delusion in terms of their relationships with these people that they terrorized. And they all have this tendency to downplay the ways that they acted and behaved towards these people, because to them they felt like it was justified, and they also felt like it was normal and there was nothing wrong with what they were doing. They were just showing they cared. They just wanted that person, whether it was for a friendship or a relationship, and all the harmful things that they were doing were somehow, it was somehow okay. And so I realized that, like, okay, yeah, I'm on one planet and he's on this other planet. It's just so many things that are just popping out of these memory boxes of mine for a long time. And thank God I haven't experienced it in a while now. There was a point in time where I would just get these random phone calls and it would be silence. Like, you could hear the person breathing on the phone. Sometimes you could even hear the TV in the background, but they were just sitting there. As I said, hello? Hello? Like, I can hear you breathing. And one time I was like, I'm just gonna sit here and put the phone on mute and just see how long it is that they sit here, and maybe see if they'll say something. And I don't know how long I let that phone sit there, and they just sat on the phone. It's making my skin crawl right now as I think about it. But yeah, eventually it stopped. I don't know if he just created a less obvious username and still continues to follow me. I really don't know, but I think I'm at a point now where I believe maybe he's either grown from those kinds of behaviors, or his fixation is now on someone else. And from watching I Am a Stalker, I just pray that it is the former and not the latter, because things like that don't tend to end very well. And I just thank God that I had the thought to try to distance myself and disconnect in a way that wouldn't set him off to do, something crazy. I realized that the best way for me to disconnect was for me to be kind enough not to set him off, but also off-putting enough to where he would decide that I wasn't worth chasing anymore. In 2018, that was 7 years after we had dated for those 3 months. And so this wasn't something that was short-lived. For those who may be in a situation like that, whether it's someone who is stalking you in person or online, I'm going to try to give tips based on my personal experience of what you can do to safely detach yourself and get away from that person. So some of the red flags that, like I said, I missed was just like how quickly he attached to me. I think we should be very mindful of when someone does want to get super close to you so quickly, that in itself is a red flag, because it's just like, why are you so into me when you don't quite know me yet, you know? Like when you think about love bombing, that is a red flag. So definitely take that into account. Something else that you should be wary of and see as a red flag is someone who is like controlling, in that they want to know what you're doing. They want to know where you're at. They're doing things like calling you back to back to back to back to back. They don't respect your boundaries. That's something that you should, probably pump the brakes on when you see. Also, someone who has a very traumatic background, and this is not to say that everyone who has a traumatic background will end up being this way, but if they are showing signs that they have attachment issues and they are clinging to you, obsessive, being possessive of you, I would take that as a sign to not go any further. That obsession can become very dangerous, and like I said, when you're younger, and I see some people who are in their 20s and 30s who are still very much so saying things like, I want someone who is obsessed with me. Like I said, in theory it sounds cute, but when you are with someone who is genuinely obsessed with you, it is scary and can potentially be life-threatening. So you want to be careful of that. Signs that you are being stalked: if you are getting those random phone calls, those private calls, no one's saying anything, if you get the sense that you're being watched, if you have told this person not to contact you and they're just like disregarding that and finding other ways to get in touch with you, like if you block them on your phone, they create a social media account so that they can reach out to you. They're randomly popping up at places that you're at, and if you've mentioned that you're going to this place on like social media or something, like they conveniently are in that same place as you, more than likely it's not a coincidence. Let's say the things that you have recently talked to your loved ones about gets brought up in conversation with this person, because some stalkers are people that you are still involved with. That could be a sign of stalking, because this person could have a hidden camera, this person can have some listening device, this person could have even hacked into your phone and found a way to be able to monitor what you do on your phone and your conversations that take place on your phone. There was a girl on TikTok who actually made a video talking about her ex-boyfriend and how he managed to hack her phone and was deleting her dating apps, and then even went as far as creating a fake email account of a guy that she was dating on the app to, I don't know what he was trying to do. But yeah, that's very much so possible. And if not, I'm not mistaken, she had an iPhone. So yeah, that's definitely a sign. And the things that you can do to protect yourself is finding a safe way to get yourself away from them, to cut communication in a way that doesn't enrage them. If at all possible, you can block them on your social accounts and on your phone. You can start to document every time they contact you. Each time they pop up, document that. Each time they leave something at your door. And if it gets really bad, you can go to authorities about it. And one thing about going to the authorities is like, I'm really weary of that, because sometimes I feel like you will go to the police and you'll try to put out a restraining order, but until this person actually does bodily harm to you, they won't get in trouble. A lot of people tend to get restraining orders and the perpetrator will quickly violate that restraining order. Like it doesn't even matter to them. If anything, it gives them more ammo to contact you. But if you must, definitely go to authorities, because at that point, if they do violate that restraining order, then they will be arrested. But yeah, it's just scary. I think the best thing that we can do to protect ourselves is just see those red flags and try our best to stay away from someone who has the qualities and characteristics that could very likely make them a stalker or put them in a position to become really obsessive and possessive of you. So yeah, that is my story time. Thank you so much for watching if you got all the way to the end. I like being able to come on here and share these things because when I talk about it, I realize just how many things I've gone through and grown through, and I hope that what I share on my channel will help someone who may be going through this or help someone avoid having to go through these things altogether. But yeah, that's my story of how I had a stalker, and I hope y'all are all out here being safe. Definitely leave your thoughts in the comment section. If you've experienced something similar to this, please let me know. As usual, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.